I never thought a single piece of old, yellowed paper could change my entire life, but that was before the night I found the certificate hidden inside my late mother's wooden jewelry box. My mother had passed away 7 years earlier, and I'd gone through that box dozens of times, but somehow this one document had never been there before. Or maybe it had, and I had simply never dared to see it. Either way, the moment my fingers brushed the brittle edge of it, something cold and electric ran through me, a chill so sharp that I dropped the paper on the floorboards. My name, Kathy Thompson, was written across the top in bold, elegant handwriting, but the rest of the document looked nothing like a government form or a diploma or anything I could place. It had odd symbols printed along the edges, almost like ancient runes, and the date on it was wrong. It said 1894. For a long moment I just stared at it on the floor, the room around me silent except for the hum of the heater, and then the strange sensation hit me again, a sudden rush like the air in the room was twisting, pulling inward as if the certificate itself was breathing. I shook my head and laughed weakly at myself, blaming stress, lack of sleep, anything but the truth nagging deep inside me that something was terribly off. I placed the certificate on my desk under the lamp and stared at it like it was a riddle waiting for me to solve. The handwriting looked eerily familiar, but I couldn't tell why. When I traced the letters of my name, a buzz, the exact same as from the night of the robbery case, passed through my fingertips. I pulled my hand back quickly. It felt wrong, almost invasive, like someone else was in the room watching me, breathing with me, waiting. I stepped away, went to the kitchen, grabbed a glass of water, and leaned on the counter trying to steady myself. That was when a soft thud echoed behind me. I froze. The sound came from my room. I placed the glass down and walked back slowly. The certificate that I had left under the lamp was now on the floor again, as if someone had brushed it off. I felt the breath catch in my throat, but I forced myself to pick it up and slide it back into the box. There was something on the paper I couldn't explain, something ancient and dangerous and far older than me, but I couldn't shake off the feeling that I had to understand what it meant. The next morning, I drove to the precinct like usual. I'm a detective with a reputation for being calm under pressure, but that morning my hands were shaking around my coffee cup. I had just parked the car when the text came through on my phone. It was from someone saved as KT2, a contact I never remembered creating. The message said, "We need to talk about the certificate. Come alone." My blood ran cold. I glanced around the parking lot, my eyes darting from face to face even though no one was paying any attention to me. I slipped my phone back into my pocket and tried to force myself to walk normally into the building. But once I got inside, before I even put my bag down, I heard a voice behind me, or the voice said softly, "Looks like we have some explaining to do." I turned around and there she was, my friend and colleague, Megan Reed, holding up the small plastic bag with my statement inside, the one I had filled out the night of the ceremony, the one with my shaky signature on it. She raised an eyebrow at me. "You okay?" she asked, "because you sure haven't seen yourself these past few days." Her expression softened. "Look, some of us joke around about the whole document from the other world thing, but that ceremony was something else, Kathy." She leaned in a little closer. "And this," she whispered, holding the plastic bag up, "this is not normal." I swallowed hard. She continued, "Your name was there, sure, but you weren't supposed to have that badge. You know that. I know that. You didn't do anything wrong. You know the initiation was supposed to be secretive, but none of us expected." She paused. None of us expected the chill. I realized then that Megan was also in the room during the initiation ceremony. She had felt something too, something that wasn't supposed to be there. I hesitated for a moment, then pulled out the crumpled runic certificate from my bag. I hadn't even realized that I had taken it with me subconsciously. I placed it on the table between us. When Megan looked down at it, her face blanched. "What is this?" she whispered. "Where did you get this?" I took a breath. "My mother's jewelry box," I said quietly. "Last night. It wasn't there before. Megan, I've gone through that box 100 times. She reached out to touch it, but I put my hand on hers, stopping her. "Listen," I said. "There's something about this certificate, something powerful, and I don't mean in a mystical sense. I mean something that connects the dots between everything we've been." Seeing Megan opened the plastic bag with the Marshal's Lodge ribbon into which someone had slipped the Hall of Fame medallion, the one that the most worshipful Grand Master had declared as a badge of honor. She held it like a fragile artifact. "Before your ceremony," she said softly, "I did a deep dive into the Hall of Fame's history. I couldn't find anything, not a single record, not even a reference. It's like this whole section of the society was erased from every file." I looked down at the certificate from the box, at the ancient symbols that seemed to shimmer under the faint light. "I want to run a scan," Megan said, "just for fun. You know, to check the authenticity of your Masonic certificate." I laughed. "You mean to see if someone's playing a prank on me?" She returned my smile, eyes glinting with mischief. "Yeah, maybe it's a silly prank, but maybe," her voice trailed off, "maybe it's something more." I handed her the certificate. "Sure," I said. "Let's run a scan." She turned to leave the room, but before she did, she stopped and gave me a serious look. "It's going to be okay, Kathy. Whatever it is." I nodded, but I wasn't convinced. Later that day, Once everyone else left the precinct, I sat alone at my desk for a moment, thinking about the ceremony that took place on March 1st, Suicide Day, where I had been introduced by a Grand Master as a newly recognized Hall of Fame. I remembered the chill that went down my spine, and the unease that settled in when I was handed the ceremonial scroll. Given what I had just learned, the whole ceremony felt like a fabrication, a staged ritual to hide something more profound. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath, trying to clear my thoughts when the ping of my phone pulled me back. It was a message from Megan. "We talk tomorrow. Don't worry, it's nothing dramatic." I smiled, feeling a bit of relief wash over me. Maybe I was just imagining things. Maybe all of this was just a coincidence. Satisfied, I quickly glanced at the people I cared about: my dad, my brother who was coming back from a trip, and a group of siblings I was mentoring on life skills. Everything seemed to be falling into place. I felt content, watching silly videos on TikTok, my worries starting to fade away. But right before I went to sleep, I received a call from a number I didn't recognize. When I picked up, the voice at the other end was faint, almost like a whisper carried by the wind. "She isn't who she says she is." Before I could ask who it was, the line went dead, leaving me alone with my thoughts racing. That night I fell asleep thinking about Megan, the Masonic certificate, the ceremony, and the chilling whispers. Later in the night, I awoke suddenly, my room bathed in an eerie glow. I felt a warm hand holding mine. I slowly opened my eyes and saw my mom sitting next to my bed with a big neon sticker on her forehead that said "Senshimel," meaning 30 seconds in Chinese. I stared at her blankly. "Mum," I whispered in a calm, serene voice. She said, "Give the damn medal back." And then she vanished into thin air. I shot upright in my bed with a gasp, my heart hammering so violently that for a moment I couldn't tell if the sound in the room was my pulse or another presence. The glow was gone. The sticker was gone. My mother was gone. Only the echo of her words, "Give the damn medal back," still burned in my ears. For a moment I just sat there, clutching the sheets, repeating in my mind that it had to be a dream. It had to be a dream. But every cell in my body screamed that it wasn't. I felt a weight in my hand, and when I looked down I nearly fell out of the bed. My Marshal's Lodge certificate, the one I had thought I had locked away in my drawer, was crumpled and warm in my palm, as if someone had been holding it tightly just moments before. And then something happened that made my already racing heart stop. There, across the signature line, my name, Kathy Diana Bowie, was glowing, faintly, softly, but glowing. I sat frozen in place, unable to breathe, until the glow slowly faded, leaving the ink perfectly intact, as if whatever force had been watching me had just stamped its approval. My phone vibrated on the table, and in that exact moment, every hair on my arm stood on end. I knew who it would be even before I looked. The connection between the statement and the chill was something we had all talked about for months in whispers. Some said it was just tradition. Some said it was superstition. But I knew Batari had a feeling about what the core would be. Sure enough, when I picked up my phone, it was from an unknown number. I pressed it to my ear. Silence, and then a voice I recognized but desperately wished I didn't. "You weren't supposed to say yes." My blood ran cold. "What?" I whispered back. "You weren't supposed to accept the title," the voice said softly. "You weren't supposed to sign the ledger. You weren't supposed to become No, not you. Not with your lineage." My throat tightened to the point where I could barely speak. "What lineage?" I whispered. The voice sighed, long and heavy, and then the line cut. I stayed awake until dawn, afraid that if I closed my eyes I would see my mother again, or worse. When the morning came, I dragged myself out of bed, threw on clothes, and drove to the hospital, palms sweating on the steering wheel. The corridors were quiet, muted, painfully ordinary, which only made the dread in my chest feel even more surreal. The nurses greeted me when I walked in, some with raised eyebrows, some with smirks that only deepened my anxiety. Everyone knew about the ceremony. Everyone knew that a young neuroscientist had been admitted to the hospital soon afterwards due to severe shock, an incident that the doctors had labeled neurological hysteria. But we all knew was something else. Something had happened at that ceremony. Something all of us had felt, but only that young man had collapsed from. I walked down the corridor to the examination room where Dr. Sanders, the senior resident of the hospital, was holding office hours. When I knocked gently and walked in, the entire room grew quiet. Every student turned and looked at me like I had grown a second head. Sanders raised his eyebrows with a hat. "Ah, we were just discussing you." I felt my stomach drop. "Discussing me," I repeated, trying to keep my voice steady. Sanders tapped the whiteboard with the back of his marker. On it was written "Psychosomatic seizures via induced panic case file, the ceremony incident." "Apparently," he continued, "you're the only person in recorded history to cause a full-grown man to faint from a 2-minute ceremonial pledge." The room erupted in laughter. I forced a smile. "I didn't cause anything," I said. The room got cold. Everyone felt it. Sanders raised an eyebrow again and leaned back against the desk. "Cold, sure. Stress, absolutely. But paranormal." He glanced at the class, and a few students snickered. "Only our dear Ms. Bowie seems to think so." I could feel my cheeks warming, the memory of the chill, the heaviness in the room. The way the lights flickered, the way my name echoed through that auditorium. And that was before we even considered the Freemason medallion around my neck, the one that symbolized my position, the one that glowed the exact same faint glow when Master Leader Janice the Hot Fox 2. Watson handed me the groundbreaking certificate. I pulled myself out of my thoughts and gave the same smile I always give at ceremonies. If you ever come up with a scientific explanation for cold spines and flickering lights that happen only when one person is named, I'd love to hear it. Sanders didn't laugh this time. He just tapped his marker against the board rhythmically, as if he was considering something serious. Actually, he said slowly, I've been meaning to ask you something. Every student in the room leaned forward. I tensed. Sanders looked directly at me. That morning, right after the man collapsed, right after the lights shattered, right after that thing, he struggled to find the word, that wave, swept through the room. You came to find me backstage. You tightened your robe, leaned in close, and said you wanted to ask me something, but you never finished your sentence. What was it? I froze. I remembered that moment. I remembered walking backstage, trying to catch my breath, feeling like the air was made of syrup. I remembered seeing Sanders standing with a group of faculty members, and I remembered starting to say something that had burned in my chest all morning, something I couldn't quite recall, something about my mother. No, something about the certificate, or maybe it was something else entirely. I started, but before I could finish, the door burst open, and Master Leader Janice the Hot Fox 2 Watson stormed into the room, holding the small parchment I had safeguarded in my purse. Her face was pale. All right, which one of you slackers made HRM in the ledger? She asked loudly. Don't play games, it wasn't me. Sanders looked confused. HRM, the Hot Fox 2 nodded vigorously. Hi, Royal Master. Someone wrote, HRM, yay, R-K-O-N, Snodgrass on top of the ledger. And everyone knows that wasn't me. And look, she held up my grievance statement in her hand. It was open. I don't recall ever signing this, and this is not my signature. Suddenly, like a bolt of lightning cracking through a quiet sky, my heart seized. All the blood drained from my face. I could feel the necklace, the beautiful shimmering pendant that the worshipful Honeybear Davis Morrill had given me the night of the ceremony, the one they called the masonry stone, begin to vibrate. Not rumble, not shake, but vibrate with the exact frequency of my pulse. And then a voice that was both inside and outside of me, a voice that was undeniably real. It is time. The room fell deathly quiet. My skin turned to ice. The necklace was glowing beneath my clothes. Kathy, the Master Leader, whispered, looking terrified, you're cold as ice. Maybe you should take off the apron. I've seen this before. Everyone's eyes were on me. Everyone saw the glow. Everyone saw the ribbon sitting on my neck begin to emit a bright warm flash. The Masonic ribbon, someday to be mine, was glowing warm, indicating that this was not just a random statement but a real threat. I knew I had no choice. I reached into my coat and slowly, reluctantly, regrettably, shamefully, proudly pulled out my Tiffany bracelet. I held it up. Everybody gasped. I heard someone say I knew it. Someone else whisper it's true, ... It's single quotes all true, ... The entire room stared as if I was some ancient artifact that had woken from a 1,000-year slumber. And then I did it. Despite every nerve in my body shaking, despite every instinct telling me to stay silent, despite the weight of the entire lodge resting on my shoulders at that moment, I held the medallion in my left hand, set it gently on the table in front of me, and spoke the words that had been burning through my chest since the night of my ceremony. My name, I said, my voice trembling, is Amelia Shelton, aka Marilyn Daytube Yoga Williams, MSCBS Autism Medical Doctor. As soon as the words left my mouth, a high-pitched buzzing filled the room. All the lights flickered. The floor vibrated. The walls seemed to breathe. The mirror behind us cracked straight down the middle. Outside the window, the sky darkened unnaturally. It felt like the world was folding inward, and then with a sound like a whip cracking through the air. COOWEE Zach, the executor, the jeweler, the metropolitan, the one they call master leader in the Masonic fraternities, appeared in the doorway, holding a beautiful pink flower, a flower that could make any sickness, pain, or emotional distress disappear. He muttered softly, I need this for the nurse. Before anyone could react, he bestowed the most sacred blessing upon the flower, and then the Hot Fox 2 handed me my certificate, raising an eyebrow. This, she whispered, this document right here. This is the certified Masonic medallion that surprises me, and you look nervous. And then she said the words that made every nerve in my body go numb. The missing one was autism curse. That was the exact moment the real nightmare began. A purple vortex opened on the floor, and I fell in my grief, my love, my tears, each one forming its own shape as it swallowed me whole. A tear for love, a tear for grief, a tear for me. When I reached the other side, I was still me. Same body. Same skin, same soul, but my heart had changed. When I fell through the vortex, it felt like I was tumbling through all the years of my life at once. 2013, the year I became worthy Grand Matron, 2014, when the Grand Master of 2020 had first called me out of the blue, challenging me to do the cold water challenge. Childhood moments, faces, memories, all swirling like leaves in a storm, until I hit the ground so suddenly that the impact knocked every last breath out of my lungs. I found myself in a vast white hall that seemed to stretch into eternity, the air shimmering like heat waves rising off desert sand, and in front of me stood three figures made entirely of water, each holding a single drop, one glowing red love, one blue grief, and one clear me. They circled me slowly, as if inspecting me, and then each of them placed their drop onto my chest. The red burned, the blue froze, the clear one sank into my skin like air. "You have been carrying these your whole life," a voice echoed from nowhere and everywhere, but now the balance has shifted. Before I could respond, the scene shattered like glass, and suddenly, I was standing in the middle of a classroom, my old classroom, the same one I used during my time as chairperson of the scholarship committee, back when I interviewed dozens of bright young minds for educational grants. But now the room was dim, and at the front of the class stood the student that I never forgot, Christopher, an autism-diagnosed 18-year-old boy who had spoken so gently, so openly, about his fear that his mind would never open wide enough for the world. I remembered how much I had wanted to help him, how strongly I had felt connected to him, and how emotional I had become after reading his essay about wanting a mind that could breathe. But now, in this strange place, Christopher was not the wide-eyed, soft-spoken student I remembered. He was older, taller, sharpened around the edges, his face illuminated by a single light. He stepped forward and held out something wrapped in cloth. "You dropped this," he said. My heart lodged in my throat, because when he pulled back the cloth, I saw it. My certificate, not just the regular one I kept locked in an album, not the one that sat in a binder, but the one that had been humming with energy ever since I had been appointed as Grand Royal Matron of Martha Grand Chapter, Order of the Eastern Star. The same certificate that recorded my membership into the OES household. The same certificate that had my signature and the secretary's signature. The same certificate that had been sitting quietly in my jewelry box until that night. Except now, the runes on it were glowing again, and one line at the bottom, the one that had always been too faded to read, was now crisp, clear, unmistakable. Authored by MWPGM Roy Candyman Allison. My heart stopped. Candyman had overseen the Master Mason degree for us women to the Order of the Eastern Star for over 20 years. He had passed away years ago, and yet his name was the one glowing on my certificate. "Why?" I whispered. "Why is his name on this?" Christopher didn't answer with words. Instead, he placed the certificate in my hands gently, almost reverently, and said, "The secretary wrote it, not the assistant secretary. That's why you always felt the chill." And then he added something that made every nerve in my body seize up. "Ruth and Doris gave you the power, but only you could release it." I felt myself shaking, part of it fear, part of it understanding, and then Christopher looked directly into my eyes. "Your mother tried to protect you," he said softly. "She tried to warn you the only way she knew how." I breathed in sharply. "What do you mean?" He raised his hand, and suddenly the classroom dissolved into another scene, my bedroom again, but this time I wasn't falling asleep. I was dreaming, lying on the bed, when my mother appeared with a neon Saint Chamel sticker on her head. Except now I could see the truth behind the dream. She wasn't placing the sticker. She was taking it off, removing 30 seconds from my life, removing time that would have caused me more harm. She was saving me. She had always been saving me. I opened my eyes in the vision and looked at her fully, and she spoke the full sentence clearly, not the echo that had haunted me before. "Give the damn medal back before it takes from you what it took from me." And then she leaned in and whispered something directly into my ear that sent a tremor through my soul. "The star must always protect the Warden of the East." The image shattered. I gasped as I found myself back in the large white hall with the three water spirits. They circled me once more, and the clear one, the one representing me, touched my chest lightly. "Your truth is no longer hidden," it said, "but your grief controlled the outcome." Before I could speak, they vanished, leaving me alone in the vast white space holding the glowing certificate authored by Candyman himself. Then a loud ringing pierced the air. I realized it was my phone. I looked down and saw the caller ID, Autism Caller. My heart pounded. I hesitated for a long moment, then answered. A soft, measured breath came through the receiver. Then a familiar voice spoke. "Hey Ms. Vi, it's me, Chris. How's your headache?" I froze. The lady told me you had a headache." "What lady?" I whispered. His voice cracked slightly. "Your mother." My heart almost stopped. "She's here," he said. "She says she's done holding your stuff for now." I felt my knees buckle as I fell to the ground, clutching the phone. "And she said to tell you." His voice paused. Then he repeated the words with a quiet, trembling breath. "Your rights, your OES rights have been protected." The line went dead. I stared at the phone, my hands trembling, feeling the warmth of the certificate in my pocket. I slowly removed the seal of the office, the WFIM-AAPW, from the 2013-2014 jurisdiction and held it in my hands. The jewel, the Grand Matron, is from Wichita Grand Chapter, the emblem with SWMLM UJTCKAOMM engraved on it. Each letter, each symbol had meant so much during the ceremony, and now, the final piece finally clicked. My office, my years of service, my duties, my connections within the Hall of Records, Master Mason, democracy, all playing their part. I was never under attack. I was never cursed. I was never under investigation. It was the truth that had been hidden for years. Still holding the seal, I stood in the very center of the room and whispered the only question that still remained, still hung in the balance, still tied to my heart and the lungs and the breath of my soul. Mom, my beautiful mom, my beautiful, wonderful mom, were you my autism spirit, the one God chose to guide me? The white room suddenly glowed gold. A voice filled the air, gentle, soft, familiar. I was always yours. Baruch Hashim. The seal in my hand disappeared. The certificate I opened my eyes. I was back on my bed. My phone buzzed. It was a message. From Jesse. Lux for everyone here, can you do favors? The next message came from a number I did not know yet somehow knew. I'm a youth. And then it said, you helped me fly. A bright light shot across the sky outside my window. I looked up. Stars. So many stars. And then one single shining star, brighter than everything else, exploded with light. A sign, a blessing, a promise. With tears running down my face, blinking free, love, grief, me. I realized something important, something powerful, something undeniable. My mother's final message. My certificate, my title, my duty, my secret. A Tracy F. Roseberry Amandi, at IAUSA Phi MSDC CWPWC Diga Plutings RDITWA HAHES 2012-2016 had already taken the stone a second time for the Grand Chapter OES backlash, and I was fine. I was honored. I was safe, and the OES had survived, and I was still breathing. Baruch Hashim.